The laughter started before she realized it was directed at her. Her cream-colored blazer was neatly pressed, her hair styled with care, her posture confident without being demanding. She wasn't rushing. Behind her, two airline staff members leaned toward each other. The other shook her head slowly, lips curling into a smile that carried no warmth. Their voices dropped, but not low enough. "Does she really think she belongs here?" one of them whispered. In fact, one raised her eyebrows slightly, as if challenging her to respond. "Can I help you?" the woman asked, her voice even and calm. The first attendant straightened immediately, slipping into a tone that sounded polite on the surface but sharp underneath. "Yes, actually. We need to see your boarding pass." The woman nodded without hesitation and handed over her phone. The attendant glanced at the screen briefly, then frowned. "You're holding up the aisle," she said. "You should step back until your group is called." "My group has already been called," the woman replied. "I'm assigned to seat 2D. The second attendant let out a short laugh before catching herself. "First class," she said. "Ma'am, first class is full." "Then there's an error," she replied, "because that's my seat." The first attendant crossed her arms. "There's no confusion," the woman said quietly. "You can't just walk into first class because you feel entitled to it." The second attendant's eyes widened. The first stared at the screen as if it might suddenly contradict itself. A heavy silence spread across the cabin. "There must be a mistake," the first attendant muttered. A senior crew member approached, her presence commanding immediate attention. "What seems to be the issue?" she asked. "I was mocked while standing where my ticket placed me," the woman replied calmly. The senior attendant reviewed the boarding pass and looked back at her staff. No one laughed. She reached her seat and placed her bag beneath it, movements deliberate and controlled. Only when she sat did she feel her heart beating faster, not from fear, from restraint. "You handled that well," he said softly. "Thank you," she replied. The plane prepared for departure, the earlier tension lingering like static in the air. The two attendants avoided her side of the cabin entirely. She asked. "I'm fine," the woman replied. "Yes, I'm on board," she said calmly. "Everything is fine." The senior attendant noticed the name briefly displayed. "Ma'am," she said carefully, "may I confirm something?" "You may," the woman replied. "You're affiliated with the U.S. Senate." The attendant asked quietly. Outside the aircraft, several people stopped her. "I'm glad you didn't let that slide," one said. "You reminded them to think twice." Another added. The woman smiled politely and continued walking. She had not raised her voice. She had not demanded recognition. And that had been enough. As she walked through the jet bridge, the noise of the airport slowly replaced the heavy silence of the cabin. The echo of footsteps, the rolling of suitcases, the distant announcements over the intercom all felt strangely grounding. Yet her mind was still replaying the moments that had unfolded on board. Not the laughter itself, but the confidence behind it. The certainty with which judgment had been delivered, as if it were an unquestionable truth. She adjusted the strap of her bag on her shoulder and kept moving forward, her pace unhurried. A few passengers from the flight passed her, offering small nods or quiet smiles. No one said anything out loud, no. They didn't need to. What had happened had been witnessed. Near the terminal exit, she stopped briefly, taking a deep breath. She wasn't shaking. She wasn't angry. What she felt was something quieter, heavier, and more enduring. Awareness. The understanding that moments like this weren't isolated incidents. They were part of a larger pattern that many people experienced in fragments throughout their lives. She pulled her blazer closer around her shoulders. As she scanned the curb for her driver, her phone vibrated in her hand. A message appeared from a colleague. "Did you land safely?" She typed back. "Yes, I'll be home shortly." At home, she placed her bag by the door and slipped out of her shoes. The quiet of the space wrapped around her immediately. She poured herself a glass of water and sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing in particular. Her phone lay face up beside her, screen dark, but she knew it wouldn't stay that way for long. By morning, messages had already begun to circulate. A passenger had posted about the incident. Another had added details. Someone else had uploaded a short clip taken discreetly during boarding. The comments ranged from outraged disbelief to painful recognition. She read them slowly, deliberately, not allowing herself to absorb the anger, but acknowledging the shared experience behind it. Later that day, she received a call from her office. The tone was careful, professional. They had already been contacted by the airline. "We wanted you to hear it from us first," the voice on the other end said. "They're taking this seriously." She closed her eyes briefly. "They should," she replied. The following week, an official apology arrived. Not a vague statement, not a generic form letter. It named the behavior, it acknowledged harm, it outlined corrective action. She read it twice before setting it aside. Accountability mattered, but it wasn't the end goal. Awareness was. In the days that followed, she noticed subtle changes in herself. When she entered rooms, she no longer softened her presence. She didn't shrink or overcompensate. She spoke when she had something to say and remained silent when she didn't, without feeling the need to justify either choice. At a conference shortly after, she stood in line waiting for her badge. A young woman ahead of her kept glancing back nervously, clutching her documents tightly. When it was the woman's turn, the attendant hesitated, scanning her papers longer than necessary. The woman recognized the look instantly. "She's registered," she said calmly, before the hesitation could turn into something else. The attendant nodded quickly and processed the badge. The young woman turned around, eyes wide with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. She smiled gently. "You don't need permission to be here." That night, she thought again about the flight, about how different the outcome could have been if she had stepped aside quietly, if she had allowed embarrassment to override certainty. She understood now that resistance didn't always need to be loud to be effective. Sometimes it was simply about refusing to move. Months later, she boarded another plane. Different airline, different city, same routine. She wore the same understated confidence, the same calm expression. As she stepped into the cabin, a flight attendant greeted her warmly and scanned her ticket without hesitation. "Welcome aboard," the attendant said with a genuine smile. She returned it, not because she needed reassurance, but because respect should never feel extraordinary. As she took her seat, she looked around the cabin. People from every background, every story, every walk of life, sharing the same confined space for a few hours. She wondered how many quiet assumptions were being formed in that moment, and how many would go unchallenged. When the plane lifted off, she gazed out the window as the ground fell away. The hum of the engines was steady, constant, almost meditative. Not because the world had changed overnight, but because she had learned something important about herself. That silence, when chosen deliberately, could be just as powerful as words.